They laughed at her dream of owning them all, but they didn't know the fire they were fanning. What happens when the most overlooked person in the room is also the one with the power to change everything? Let us know in the comments section below where you're watching from today. She remembered every pair of shoes she cleaned. Black dress pumps with the sole half peeled off. Faded Jordans with frayed laces. Patent leather heels that screamed of desperation, or maybe resilience. To Stacy Barker, those shoes weren't just dirty. They were stories. Stories like hers. 12-year-old Stacy used to sit in the maintenance hallway of Crestwood Mall, knees hugged to her chest, watching her mother, Lorraine, scrabble away footprints and spilled sodas as if she were scrubbing something far deeper. Lorraine didn't smile much, but she did, old gospel songs, songs that smelled like bleach and hope. "Don't be late to class," Lorraine would mutter, scrubbing gum off the tile with the fierce love of a woman who had no time for tears. "I won't," Stacy would say, backpack on her shoulders but eyes still on the vast, flickering mall floors. Back then, Stacy thought Crestwood Mall was magic. A glass dome above the food court caught the sun just right in the mornings. The mannequins looked like they were about to blink. And when the stores closed and only a few janitors remained, the silence felt like something sacred. She didn't care that half the stores were already empty, or that the mall smelled like mothballs and bad decisions. To her it was a palace. 20 years later, that palace was a tomb. The chairs in the food court were missing bolts. Half the ceiling lights were out. And what used to be a kid's play area now held a few moth-eaten bean bags and a cracked fish tank with no fish in it. Still, Stacy walked through it slowly, like it was her first time all over again. She paused in front of the old Claire's storefront. A dusty for lease sign hung inside the glass. She tilted her head. Her earrings, small silver hoops, caught the light. She used to beg her mom to let her get her ears pierced there. Lorraine always said no, said it was too expensive, said they could try the pharmacy with the free piercing gun instead. They never did. "I'm gonna own this place one day," Stacy whispered to herself, the way she did every time she came back. Not loud, just loud enough for the universe to hear. The current owners of Crestwood Mall, 4 white men in outdated suits, sat in a cracked leather conference room 3 floors above her. They were all variations of the same: thinning hair, gut pressing against belt, skin that turned pink under fluorescent light. The leader, Ron Bigsby, chewed his pen cap while listening to a younger man present a bar graph no one cared about. "Traffic's down 36% year over year," the younger man said. "We've got 2 anchors left, and both are behind on rent." Ron grunted. His gaze drifted from the screen to the window. Below, a group of teens loitered near the old arcade, their laughter bouncing off the concrete. One of them kicked an empty cup across the floor. "You know," Ron said, "I remember when this place was packed, Christmas '95. You couldn't move in here. Now it's like a damn graveyard." "I think we need to consider selling," said Mark, one of the quieter partners, "before the city starts sniffing around with that blight remediation talk." Ron looked at him as if he'd spoken another language. "Sell to who?" he said. "Ain't no one lining up to buy a dying mall." "There was that offer," another man piped up. Ron squinted. "That woman, black woman, said she used to come here as a kid. Something Barker." Ron's lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "What you said? The janitor's daughter with the PowerPoint and the pipe dream. She wants to restore community wealth or some crap like that. She had real financing," the man added, "backed by a regional credit union. Her numbers weren't bad." Ron leaned back in his chair, arms folded across his chest. "Not happening," he said. "We're not turning this place into a social justice daycare. I built this mall into what it is. I'm not selling it to someone who thinks ambition is enough." Back downstairs, Stacy stood in the middle of the old food court, watching kids ride broken scooters across the tile. The smell of old grease and cold pretzels clung to the air. She took out her phone and opened a note labeled Crestwood Vision Phase 1. It had bullet points, zoning approvals, tax incentives, partnership models for minority-owned startups. Everything Ron Bigsby had laughed at. "Don't stop dreaming, baby," her mother used to say. "They can't take what you ain't given." A security guard strolled past her, older, Latino, maybe 60. He gave her a respectful nod. "You here every week now?" he asked. Stacy smiled. "Just checking the pulse," she said. "Still beats." She didn't tell him that her financing had gone cold, that her presentation had been passed over, that the owners laughed her out of the room. She didn't tell anyone, because what they didn't know, what Ron Bigsby and his graying boardroom couldn't see, was that Stacy Barker had something bigger than capital. She had time. She had history. And she had patience. When the final store closed, when the last rent check bounced, when the rats outnumbered customers, Ron would be ready to talk again. And this time, it wouldn't be for full price. It'd be for half. Stacy walked toward the West Wing, where the old movie theater had once played second-run films for $5. She stared up at the rusted marquee. She could see it already. Of the rut, not the failure, but the blueprint of what could come next, of what would. Stacy didn't cry in the parking lot. She sat in her car, an old burgundy sedan with a sticky gear shift and a tape deck that hadn't worked since 2017, and stared straight ahead. The rejection letter from Crestwood Holdings was still open on her phone screen, glowing with corporate coldness. "At this time, we do not believe your proposal aligns with our vision for the property." Their vision. As if they had one, as if the dying mall with its flickering lights and boarded-up boutiques was part of a strategy instead of a slow, neglected funeral. She leaned her head back against the headrest and exhaled through her nose. Not angry, not even surprised, just tired. The kind of tired that wraps itself around your chest like a seatbelt during a crash. She closed the message and opened another one, from her mother. A voicemail, the kind Lorraine still left instead of texting. "Hey, baby, just calling to say I saw they're putting a new fence around the east entrance of Crestwood. Something about loitering. That's where you used to sit and eat those $1.00 churros, remember? Anyway, don't forget, what's yours is yours. Even if you gotta wait a little longer. Love you." She hit play again and listened twice. Then she started the car. Her apartment smelled like cinnamon and budget candles from the discount store, and the walls were still the beige color the landlord swore was eggshell. She dropped her bag by the door and kicked off her shoes, then moved to the kitchen where her laptop sat on the counter, still open to the spreadsheet of projections she'd worked on for 6 months. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. Every figure on the screen meant something. Youth entrepreneurship grants, municipal revitalization loans, anchor tenant interest letters. She had data. She had heart. But what she didn't have was a seat at their table, and she was starting to think she didn't want one anymore. Farther across town, Ron Bigsby was pouring himself a whiskey at his office minibar, laughing over speakerphone with one of his partners. "I swear, she had graphs and quotes and all kinds of little colors in her deck," he said between chuckles. "She even said something about a community-led investment trust, like I'm about to hand over a multi-million-dollar property to a GoFundMe with lipstick." "That the same one whose mama used to clean the food court?" the voice on the phone asked. "Same one," Ron said, sipping his drink. Had the nerve to act like she belonged in the room. "Whole time I'm thinking, you should be in here mopping the floor like she did." He didn't notice his assistant standing outside his door, quietly gripping her notebook, jaw clenched. Back in her apartment, Stacy opened an email draft. Subject line, follow up on Crestwood Mall acquisition proposal. She stared at it for 10 minutes before she hit delete. Then she grabbed a marker from the drawer and wrote 2 words across her dry erase board in big, bold letters. Plan B. The next morning, she walked into the Southside Community Resource Center with her sleeves rolled up and purpose in her step. It wasn't much. Linoleum floors, donated chairs, an ancient coffee maker that sputtered more than brewed. But it was home to a handful of grassroots programs trying to keep the community's heartbeat from flatlining. Chantel Rice was waiting by the reception desk, flipping through a stack of flyers. "You look like you didn't sleep," Chantel said without looking up. "Didn't," Stacy replied. "You still got that contact at the Urban Renewal Initiative." Chantel raised an eyebrow. "What are you planning?" "Plan B." "Which is?" "We built it anyway." Chantel finally looked up. "You mean a new mall?" "No," Stacy said. "I mean something better. A hub. A space for all the pieces we've been trying to hold together in separate rooms." Chantel didn't speak for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You're serious?" Stacy nodded back. "Dead serious." The city had given up on Crestwood. The owners were too proud to sell it to her, but too broke to fix it. That meant it was only a matter of time. A little decay, a few more safety violations, then they'd be desperate, and when they were, Stacy would be waiting. In the meantime, she needed land. Not just any land, legacy land. The kind stilled in black families from before redlining pushed them out. There were whispers about the old train depot near 5th and Emerson, land that once held a warehouse, now just an open stretch with weeds taller than kids and stories buried under the soil. She met with Jeremiah Jem Walker that afternoon. He was her oldest friend, the one who used to make Lego blueprints with her in 6th grade and now worked as an actual architect with a firm uptown that mostly remodeled rich people's condos. He listened as she unspooled her vision. An incubator for local vendors, community-led childcare, youth tech programs, and affordable live work spaces. He didn't interrupt, just nodded. Scribbled, nodded again. When she finished, he leaned back and smiled. "You know what this sounds like?" "What?" "A revolution." She grinned. "No, it's just home. Built right." They started working out of his garage, floor plans on one wall, a timeline on another. They used pins and string and color-coded Post-its like they were planning a heist. In a way, they were. Stealing back what had always belonged to them. Within weeks, Stacy's phone buzzed more than it rang. Nonprofits, local high school principals, a black-owned credit union, even a retired city planner who'd heard about her plans through a cousin at the barber's shop. And through it all, she kept visiting Crestwood Mall once a week, quietly, casually, measuring the decay like a doctor taking vitals. The food court was sealed off now. Rain leaked through the skylight. Someone had scrawled "Closed forever" on the West Wing wall in purple spray paint. Ron Bigsby, meanwhile, was still playing king of a castle built on quicksand. His partners were pulling out, one by one, blaming the downturn, blaming interest rates, blaming everything but the truth, that Crestwood had no soul left. No life. But Stacy did, and she was ready to give it a new one. The call came at 7:02 a.m. Stacy was seated at her kitchen table, still in a faded hoodie and sleep-swollen eyes, stirring a chipped mug of instant coffee, when her phone buzzed with a number she recognized, but didn't expect to see for at least another year. She didn't answer at first. She let it buzz twice. 3 times. Then she hit accept and didn't say a word. "Miss Barker," said the voice. Tight. Edged. Forced. It was Ronald Bigsby. "We'd like to meet." The silence on her end was longer than polite, just long enough to make him uncomfortable. "I'm listening," she finally said, flat as a stone. Our board has reconsidered your offer. Given recent circumstances, we believe it may be time for a change in direction." "Circumstances," she echoed, her voice barely concealing the sarcasm. Ron didn't bite. "Yes, the economic climate, retail downturn, city pressure, you know how it is." Stacy blinked slowly, savoring the words he couldn't say. "Sure," she said. "I know exactly how it is." They met at a diner halfway between Crestwood and downtown. Stacy didn't bother dressing up. No blazer, no heels. Just jeans, boots, and the same hoodie she wore during her early morning phone call. Ron arrived in a suit, 2 shades too tight, and a smile that stretched his skin too thin. He reached to shake her hand. She didn't move. They sat in a booth by the window. The waitress came over and asked if they wanted coffee. Stacy nodded. Ron declined. "Let's talk numbers," he said, folding his hands like a man still pretending he was in control. "You sure?" Stacy replied. "Not gonna laugh me out the room again?" Ron's smile flickered. "Miss Barker, I think we got off on the wrong foot. The truth is, Crestwood needs fresh vision. Someone with community ties, someone with persistence." "You mean someone who didn't give up after your smug board rejected her offer?" Ron cleared his throat. "I'm prepared to sell the property, under one condition." Stacy leaned back. "Here it comes. I want naming rights on one of the wings, a legacy acknowledgement." Stacy stared at him, unblinking. Her coffee arrived. She stirred it slowly. "You ran that place into the ground," she said finally. "You mocked me, you let it rot under your watch. And now you want your name carved into it?" Ron's face tightened. "I gave 25 years of my life to that property." "Yeah," she said, "and now it's giving itself to someone who actually cares." She slid a manila folder across the table. He opened it, revealing the original proposal. Same numbers, same plan. Only now the price was different. Lower. Much lower. His mouth opened. "You're joking." Stacy took a sip of her coffee. "You came to me, Ron. That makes me the buyer, not the beggar." Ron looked over the numbers again, each line slapping him like a cold wave. This is half your original offer." "Inflation's a killer," she said. "So is structural decay. Mold, roof leaks, vandalism. Oh, and did you know the city's considering a code enforcement citation next month?" Ron's mouth moved, but no words came out. Stacy stood. "You've got 72 hours. After that I walk. And this time, I won't look back." She dropped $2 on the table for her coffee and left him staring at a deal he couldn't afford not to take. The paperwork was signed in a conference room with broken blinds and a flickering overhead light. Ron didn't speak much, just initialed page after page, each one taking a little more air out of his lungs. When it was done, he shook her hand without making eye contact. As he walked out the door, a woman from Stacy's team quietly replaced the building's old occupancy poster with a new sign that read, "Future Site of the Juniper Commons, a Stacy Barker project." The first thing she did was unlock the back entrance, the one her mother used to wheel trash bags out of at midnight. She stood in that doorway, letting the cold air hit her face, the memory of her mother's humming echoing in the silence. She didn't cry. She just whispered, "We made it, Mama." Then she walked inside and got to work. By the next week, the cleanup had begun. Graffiti scrubbed, drywall torn down, steel beams exposed and measured. Volunteers from the community streamed in with gloves, goggles, and energy. It was messy, slow, beautiful. Jim arrived with his rolled-up blueprints and a hard hat that still had his college mascot sticker on it. Chantel coordinated a teen mentorship group to paint murals on temporary walls. Local businesses dropped off sandwiches and water. Elderly residents brought stories, advice, and more than one old photo of the mall in its golden days. Stacy stood in the center of it all, clipboard in hand, voice steady, giving orders without raising it. People listened, not because she yelled, but because her presence commanded it. Every hammer swing, every swept corner, every painted inch wasn't just construction, it was restoration. Not of a mall, but of memory, of community, of dignity. One afternoon, as they tore down the rusted Crestwood Plaza lettering from the east entrance, one of the teens asked her what the new place would be called. Juniper Commons, she said. What's that mean? She smiled. Juniper's a healing tree, grows in hard soil, keeps coming back no matter what. He nodded, impressed. And start. That's tight. She laughed. Ankles. Inside, an old kiosk was being repurposed into an information booth. She walked by it slowly, pausing for a moment. It had once sold cheap jewelry. She remembered it well, because that was where she made her first dollar at age 14, selling beaded bracelets on a fold-out table with her mother standing quietly nearby in her janitor uniform. That girl didn't know what zoning laws were, didn't know what investors meant, but she knew one thing. She didn't want to survive. She wanted to build, and now she was. The sun rose without asking permission. It poured through the massive front windows of the newly rebuilt Juniper Commons, hitting the polished concrete floor and scattering soft light across rows of local vendor stalls, art-covered walls, and a line of eager families waiting outside. Stacy Barker stood behind the glass, dressed in black slacks and a Juniper Commons sweatshirt, holding a clipboard she didn't really need anymore. It was more habit than necessity now. The real work was done. Today was about showing people what they'd built together. Behind her, Jim was double-checking the lighting fixtures over the communal co-working space, while a group of high school volunteers from Chantel's youth program carried in folding chairs for the ribbon cutting. They joked and laughed, snapping selfies beneath the big green letters that spelled Juniper Commons in clean block script across the main entrance. Stacy stepped outside for a breath. The crowd stretched around the block. People in suits, people in scrubs, people in hoodies and hijabs, grandmothers in wide-brimmed hats. This wasn't a crowd gathered to shop. This was a crowd that belonged. She spotted familiar faces. Mrs. Ava, who ran the corner salon for 22 years. Officer Morales, who used to turn a blind eye when kids skated in the old mall lot. Even the mayor, tucked in beside a city council rep, trying not to look like they were just here for the press. Chantel joined her with 2 coffees and a huge grin. "Your city's here?" Stacy nodded and took one of the cups. "It's not mine." "You sure about that?" Chantel tilted her head toward the crowd. "Because it looks like they know exactly whose name is on this place, even if it's not up on the sign." Again, Ellie floundered. A voice came over the borrowed speaker system. "Can we have everyone move toward the front steps for the ribbon-cutting ceremony?" Stacy hesitated. She hadn't prepared a speech. She'd been too busy helping assemble the pop-up library stand and double-checking vendor permits. She figured she'd say something simple, maybe let Jem or Chantel do most of the talking. But the moment she stepped onto the steps, mic in hand, something settled over her. Not nerves, not fear, just clarity. "Good morning," she said, and the crowd quieted. "My name is Stacy Barker. Some of you know me. Some of you don't. But all of you, you belong here. That's what today is about." She paused. "I grew up just a few blocks from here. My mother used to clean floors in the old Crestwood Mall. She worked night shifts while I did my homework under flickering lights and dreamed of things I didn't have the words for yet. But I knew one thing. This space had potential. And now, We finally turned that potential into something real. A cheer broke out, and she waited for it to settle before continuing. This isn't a mall. It's a second chance. It's a shared promise. We've got 25 minority-owned vendors opening today. A youth-run coffee stand, an after-school tech lab upstairs, a clinic that offers walk-ins with no insurance. And in the coming months, affordable housing will rise right behind us, designed by the same community you see here. She looked out at them, eyes gleaming. We were told no. We were told this wouldn't work, that it wasn't scalable or sustainable, that the numbers didn't add up. But guess what? Our numbers weren't just on paper, they were people. She stepped back and handed the mic to Chantel, who beamed as she took it. Jem stood at the edge of the steps with a ceremonial ribbon in one hand, gold scissors in the other. They counted down together. 3, 2, 1. The ribbons snapped clean in half, and a wave of cheers rippled through the crowd. Inside, music played. Laughter echoed. The scent of food, sweet, spicy, and warm, floated in from a line of pop-up kitchens staffed by local chefs. Stacy walked slowly through the commons, pausing at each table, hugging old friends, shaking hands with teenagers who thanked her without knowing exactly why. A little boy tugged at her sleeve and pointed toward a mural. It showed a woman in a janitor uniform, mop in hand, standing beneath a domed skylight that looked suspiciously like the old food court. "Is that your mom?" he asked. Stacy smiled. "Yep, that's her." "She looks strong," he said. She was. Hours passed. The commons buzzed like it had been alive all along, just waiting to be uncovered. A local reporter stopped her for a quote, but she kept it short. "Hope's not dead. It just needed a floor plan." Late in the day, when the crowds thinned and the sun dipped low behind the old loading docks, Stacy slipped away to the back hallway, the same one where she used to sit and wait for her mom to finish cleaning the vending machine area. She ran her fingers along the smooth new wall. It smelled like paint and lemon-scented polish. Jem found her there, leaning against the cool plaster, eyes closed. "You all right?" he asked. "Better than all right. I got something for you." He pulled something from his backpack, a small frame. Inside was an old photograph. Stacy, maybe 12, sitting on a bucket with a spiral notebook in her lap. Lorraine stood beside her, mop in hand, blurry from motion but smiling. Stacy took the frame and held it like it might vanish. "I found it while packing up my mom's garage," Jem said. "Thought you might want to put it in your office. You do have one of those now." She laughed through her tears. "No, we do. This whole place is our office." Jem leaned against the wall beside her. "So, what now?" "Now," she said, thinking about it for the first time in months without the weight of urgency. "Now we protect it. We keep it honest. We make sure it stays in our hands." He nodded. "And after that?" She looked out toward the sound of kids playing tag in the new courtyard. "Maybe we build another." Later, that night, the lights of Juniper Commons glowed soft and golden, visible from blocks away. A woman walked her dog past the entrance, paused, and stared at the building in wonder. Inside, volunteers swept floors and wiped counters, just like Lorraine once did, only now they did it with pride, not survival. They were caretakers of something built by them, for them. And in the center of it all, under the new skylight, Stacy Barker stood with her mother's memory in her chest and her city at her back. Proof that sometimes the dream they laugh at is the one that ends up saving everyone.